When I married Adam, I never imagined I would be handling this type of conflict. He is 51, I am 37. We have been married for almost 4 years. He was married to his late wife before that, who died of cancer around 1 year before we crossed paths. We tied the knot after spending several years dating. Though it's not the longest relationship, it was long enough for me to know what I was getting into, or at least I thought I was from his first marriage. Adam has 2 children, Ryan, 27, and Lily, 29. To be truly honest, I never really thought of myself as their stepmom. They made it quite evident from the beginning that their family did not include me. Simply said, I was their dad's new wife, nothing else. From what I knew, that was good. I was not aiming to occupy some new position or replace their mother in their life. Adults, they do not require another parent. But things were frigid between us from day one. Whether I attempted to reach out to them, being courteous, helpful, showing up for family events, it seemed as like there was this wall between us, and I couldn't break through. It seemed as though they had formed their opinions of me before I had an opportunity to present them with my true self. Not that I find it difficult to know from where they are coming from. When my own parents separated and began dating different people, I recall feeling embarrassed. Still, everything was different with Lily and Ryan. Though I never intended to do, they viewed me like an outsider, as though I were there to take something away from them. So we all adjusted to this strange, polite but distant arrangement, whereby we coexisted for Adam's benefit. A little fast forward later, Lily becomes involved. For her, Adam and I were really delighted, or at least I was trying to be. One finds it difficult to be really enthusiastic about someone who obviously hates you. Still, I hoped that maybe this entire wedding process may draw us closer. Perhaps it would provide something to connect over, something that would somewhat thaw the ice. I was indeed incorrect. Terribly, terribly incorrect. Lily and Ryan came over for a visit a few weeks following her engagement. It's simply a normal Saturday afternoon in our house. Nothing spectacular. We are in the living room discussing her wedding preparations when we inevitably arrive at money. Adam had been somewhat silent much of the chat, but he became rather animated when Lily inquired how much he could help. He informed her he could afford to pay for the wedding roughly $10,000. Given our circumstances, that sounded to me like a really reasonable offer. Unfortunately, Lily's response was not very good. Her expression collapsed, as though she expected something far greater than that. At first, she said nothing, but you could see she was unhappy. Not eager to stir the pot, I remained silent. Ryan simply sat there going about his customary business, observation of everything but silence. At last, Lily raised a question. Is that it? I had something more in mind. Though he seemed a little awkward, Adam maintained cool and said, Lily, I'd love to give you more, but right now this is what I can manage. Perhaps I should go into a little bit about why that $10,000 was already such a huge deal. Their medical expenditures drove them through a complete nightmare before Adam's first wife died. Every cancer treatment, hospital stay, and expenditure paid saps their reserves. To pay for things, Adam had to liquidate some investments, cash out his retirement, and even apply for a second mortgage on his property. To look after his wife in her last years, he basically gave his whole financial stability up. She passed, and he was left in a quite precarious financial situation. He had also chosen a lower-paying job with greater freedom, but paid far less. So yes, that $10,000 Lily presented? Given what he has experienced, it is plenty. Lily ? But she did not view it that way. She pressured him a little more, but Adam resisted, stating he could only provide $10,000, and that was it. She groaned theatrically, obviously upset. Then Adam mentioned he had to go to the shop for a little. I was so seated in uncomfortable quiet with Lily and Ryan. Lily then looks to me and queries, So are you going to pitch in more for the wedding? Actually, you are currently married to my dad. Her phrasing made it more than simply a question. It seemed as though she was urging me to answer no, as though she had already decided who I am. I told her, Adam and I discussed it, and the $10,000 is what we both agreed on, as I truly wanted not to escalate things. That is what we can provide together. Lily rolled her eyes and remarked, I ought to have known. You are not here to contribute. You are here for what he has. And let me say, that truly went under my nose. I had years of her coldness, tried to be the bigger person, and now she's accusing me of being a gold digger. Though I attempted to remain calm, I could feel my rage getting hotter. I at last snapped. "Excuse me, Lily," I murmured, trying not to yell. "Who do you suppose has been making the second mortgage your dad obtained pay off? Who do you suppose is maintaining the viability of this house?" She seemed shocked for a minute, as though she had not expected me to object. I still had to finish, though. "Your dad took care of your mom and lost most of his savings. And ever since we were married, I have paid for 70% of the expenses. Hence, no, I am not here for his money. I am the one enabling him to recover." Lily simply watched me, most likely attempting to absorb what I had just spoken. She got up then, calling me stuck up, and bolted from the home. Ryan said none at all, as usual. Just getting up, he trailed her out the door. And that was it. Lily vanished in a puff, and I sat there wondering whether I had gone too far. To be honest, though, what was my expected response? Just sit there and let her call me a gold digger persistently. I stayed in the living room, still boiling after they departed. I knew things were going to get much more messy, but I was done acting as like I didn't exist in this household. If they choose to view me as the worst among us, okay. I was not going to let them propagate falsehoods, though, without knowing the truth. Adam saw Lily and Ryan gone right away when he returned from the supermarket. He inquired what occurred, but I wasn't ready to start talking about it yet. I said to him, they had to go. Adam did not demand further specifics, which I appreciated right then. Though I knew I would have to tell him the full truth sooner or later, I wasn't ready to start right now. I had no idea, though. This was only the start of a far more extensive catastrophe. Things started differently the next day. When I woke up, Lily texted me, and it was precisely the type of passive-aggressive, pointed message you would have expected from her. She stated she had to chat to Adam without me around. She never even tried to keep the truth that she wanted me out of the picture. Though I bit my tongue, it took all in me not to respond with a sarcastic remark. Rather, I went to Adam and informed him Lily wanted to talk with him alone. Acting as the kind father he is, he agreed to check on her later that day to see what was happening. I did my best to keep out of it when Adam at last made the call. Still, I couldn't help listening in bits from the other room to their chat. Lily's side was not audible to me, but from what Adam was saying, I could put together enough. My stomach fell when I once heard him ask, "She said what?" Lily had twisted everything I had advised her the day before, and I knew straight away she had followed my advice on assisting with the expenses and the mortgage, and apparently converted it into an allegation directed on me for the limited wedding budget based on her sickness. It still amazed me. How someone even comes up with such? Feeling like I had been smacked in the face after all the years I had spent trying to keep things nice with her, I was enraged and disappointed. I knew I couldn't remain silent until Adam hung up. I sat him down and went over everything Lily had accused me of being a gold digger, how I had snapped and informed her about my financial contributions, and how she had stormed out after calling me stuck up. Adam listened calmly, but his eyes betrayed the turmoil. Though at least not directly, I could sense he wasn't happy that I had told his children specifics about our money. I understood as well. Actually, I did. Adam has always been somewhat quiet about money. Even with his own children, he finds discussing such specifics objectionable. But what then was my intended response? Just let Lily continue to accuse me without defending myself? Adam promised me he would attempt to sort things out by chatting to Lily. He also gently advised me to be more cautious about what I said going forward around his children, though deep down I wasn't feeling very hopeful about the course of events. A few days passed as Lily and Ryan stayed away. To be very honest, it was almost a relief to have them absent. Since the dispute, the house's tension had been sky high. I simply wanted things to return to normal. Adam and I resumed our regular schedule, although I sensed he remained concerned about the circumstances involving his children. Though I knew it was weighing on him, he tried not to show it. Then, one afternoon, Adam received another call from Lily. She did not wait for him to initially reach out this time. She simply cried out of the blue. Once more seated in the other room, I was feigning non-listening, but really paying attention to every word I could grab. Though Adam's answers told me plenty, Lily's precise words eluded me. "That's not what she meant," he said, adding, "You're blowing this out of proportion." Adam seemed more agitated than I had ever seen him when he hung up at last. Lily had been distorting the narrative even more, he informed me, giving the impression that I was attributing all that went wrong in their life to her mom's sickness. Lily said that I had suggested their mother's sickness was the reason she wasn't receiving a larger wedding budget. My blood was heating right then. She seemed to have transformed the tiniest fragment of what I had spoken into something absolutely unidentifiable. Adam reassured me he told Lily I would never say such a thing. He protected me. He did, however, also advise me once more to use greater caution while sharing with his children. I knew his perspective. He only aimed to maintain peace. Nevertheless, I couldn't get rid of the impression that Lily and Ryan would never be satisfied, no matter how much I attempted to clarify myself. Nothing I said would seem to have changed their previously formed view of me as the enemy. I determined after that call that I was done stooping down to correct things with them. I was not willing to keep tiptoeing around in my own house trying to make everyone happy while they treated me as like I belonged nowhere. If Adam wished, he could keep chatting to them. However, I was not going to keep dragging myself through the emotional roller coaster. I looked worn out. Naturally, though. Events did not stop there. Not at all, right? A few days later, Adam came to me looking apprehensive. Lily had been forwarding rumors to their extended relatives, he informed me. She was telling his parents, siblings, even some relatives, that I was attempting to control his money and influence him. Lily said that I had somehow developed into this genius, dragging all the strings behind the scenes. Really, then. By now, the focus was not even on the money. It concerned authority, control, and keeping me out of their life. I felt as though I had been dragged into some absurd soap drama, in which case I was cast as the bad stepmother, regardless of my behavior. That day, Adam's mother even phoned him expressing concern for him. She questioned whether he was okay and whether he needed assistance leaving whatever Lily had convinced him he was in. Adam seemed to me to be stuck in an impossibility. Though his family was essentially pushing him too, he did not want to pick sides, and I could see the toll it was having on him even as much he attempted to protect me. I attempted to remain cool as he informed me about the call, but within I was raging. "I'm not going to explain myself to them, Adam," I said decisively. "Your family chose to think the worst about me without ever having direct communication with me. I will not, however, sit here and defend my whole marriage to them." Adam seemed worn out, as though he lacked the will to dispute. I turned him down even though he said I may approach them and settle the confusion. Having not done anything illegal, I was not going to go begging for their permission. Adam agreed to let it go for now eventually, but I could sense he wasn't pleased about it. We seemed to be surrounded by a thick cloud about to explode once more. We both understood that this was not over, not by a long margin. The worst of all is also the impression that Lily was only sitting back, content that she had caused so much turmoil persisted with me. Adam had to travel beyond town for a job a few days later. Though the timing couldn't have been worse, it was just for the weekend. Now I had to cope with everything alone while he was away. I was still boiling over the entire circumstances with his family, but I decided I could just hide, stay to myself, and hope the weekend would pass free from any fresh conflict. Right then, wishful thinking. I heard knock on the door the day Adam departed. Opening it startled me as I wasn't expecting anyone, and Lily was standing there. She hardly gave a welcome any thought. She simply plopped on the couch, walking straight in as though she owned the house. She started a diatribe about how Adam had changed since we were married, how he used to be more engaged with the family, and how currently, supposedly, everything was about me before I could even question what she was doing here. Then she delivered the real killer. "I think you need to step back and let him reconnect with his family." I merely kept my cool by staring at her. Reticent? From my own union? Then it was very evident. She wanted absolutely nothing of me involved in Adam's life. She no longer even concealed it. Still, this time I was not about to lose my calm. She wanted me to blow out and provide additional justification for painting me as the monster. I inhaled deeply and informed her, "Look, Lily, I'm not going away. Married to each other, your dad and I make decisions jointly. Should you find it problematic, your problem is yours, not mine." She found that response one bit objectionable. She just rose up and left the home without more word, looking chilly as though she was ready to say something unpleasant. To be honest, her leaving brought relief. I was about 5 seconds away from uttering something I may come back from. Adam groaned, appearing more tired than ever as he returned from his vacation, and I told him what had transpired. Not even seemed surprised anymore. He simply appeared to be exhausted. Fairly speaking, therefore, so was I. I seemed to be the outsider in this household no matter what I did. Perhaps deep down I was beginning to accept it. Following that encounter with Lily, I considered maybe, just maybe, that things may calm down for a little. I thought she would back off a little and have whatever she wanted to express off her chest. As usual, though, I made mistakes. Lily phoned Adam once more a few days later, and this time she spoke straightforwardly. She told him straight out she still felt uneasy about me handling his money. She wanted to meet with both of us to go over it. Unlike a family trying to negotiate a difficult scenario, a gathering resembled some sort of business boardroom. I found it unbelievable when Adam informed me about this. One meeting? To go over what, precisely? I was not intending to handle Adam's money. I was not guiding him toward decisions. All I had done was help him as we rebuilt, following everything he had through with the illness of his late wife. But Lily was here, behaving as though I were some sort of mastermind dragging the strings behind the scenes. Being Adam, he considered perhaps a sit-down discussion might help to diffuse things. He reasoned that perhaps Lily would at last see I wasn't the enemy if we could all simply approach things like grown-ups. I felt unconvinced. At that point, though, I reasoned, why not try it? It's not like ignoring the scenario was doing any help, and I didn't want Adam to feel like I wasn't ready to meet halfway. We decided to gather in a neutral venue, a cafe where Adam and I used to have Saturday breakfast. The theory was that perhaps things would feel less confrontational if we were not seated in our house with all the emotional baggage that accompanied it. When the meeting day arrived, my anxiety skyrocketed. Arriving first were Adam and myself, and I sensed he was as nervous. Every time the door opened, he continued staring at it. I could feel the stress emanating from him. Though I attempted to control my own feelings, knowing what was ahead proved difficult. A few minutes later, Lily arrived looking as cool and collected as always. She got a coffee, sat into the booth across from us, and then launched direct complaints. She murmured, almost barely breathing, "I'm still not comfortable with the way things are." She motioned at me like I was some random stranger. "I don't understand why you're letting her," she said, "have control over everything." Deeply breathing, I resolved not to let my annoyance show. "I don't have control over everything, Lily," I said, being as even as I could have. "Married couple, your dad and I make decisions jointly. That is the way things operate." She was not, however, hearing any of it. She continued to assert that I had somehow seized over her dad's life. "It just feels like you're in charge, like he's different now," she added. Her phrasing of different sounded as though I had somehow converted Adam into someone else totally. Looking across at Adam, thinking he would step in and back me, he was only seated there attempting to soothe Lily down without adopting a hard posture. That came to me at that point. This was not really about control or money or any of the things Lily had been advocating. It concerned me being in the image at all. She wanted things to be as they were before I arrived, back when it was just Ryan and Adam. And more I considered it, more and more it made sense. She was still missing the life she used to know, the family dynamic that before the loss of her mother, before Adam remarried. Even if I could relate to her loss, it did not excuse the manner she had been treating me. I gave one more try to justify myself. "Look, Lily, I'm not aiming to replace anyone. I only want to help your dad. I really worry about him. I have only ever wanted it." But she was not feeling any of it. Rather, she was even more combative, stating, "It's not your place to tell me how my dad's been handling his money." She was correct, maybe. Perhaps I should never have joined those discussions, but I found it boring to be the evil depicted. I was doing everything I could to help Adam rebuild. I was not some trophy wife depending on his income. Lily simply couldn't see that, though. She saw someone who had entered a position she wasn't ready for someone else to occupy, someone not her mother. She got up eventually, grabbed her suitcase, and remarked, "Well, I guess we're done here then." She then left the diner, leaving Adam and myself seated there in startled quiet. On the ride home, we spoke not much to one another. Not much has to be said. Lily would obviously never accept me as part of their family regardless of what I accomplished, and really I was beginning to agree as well. Adam and I later that evening at last discussed what had transpired. "I'm sorry," he replied gently. "I had no idea how much this was torturing you. I reasoned that they would ultimately come around." His voice sounded so tired, as though he were bearing the weight of every conflict that had developed between his children and us. Not because I thought I had done anything wrong, but rather because I could see how hard he was trying to preserve the peace. I felt guilty. "I'm not asking you to pick sides, Adam," I said, "but you should have my back more often. You attempt to remain impartial, but I can't keep battling this alone. Neither of us finds that fair. He nodded, and I could see gears whirling in his skull. "I'll speak with Lily once more," he replied, his voice more resolutely this time. "And this time I will be clear. The conduct needs to stop. There have to be consequences if she treats you disrespectfully. Though it was something, it was not the fix I had hoped for. Though it took all this turmoil to get there, at least Adam was at last viewing things from my point of view. I had a flutter of optimism for the first time in weeks, that perhaps we might survive together. A few days later, Adam met Lily for still another conversation. He warned me ahead of time that he intended to be strict and that he would not allow her stroll all over us anymore. And sincerely, I thought he was right. Adam has always been a kind man, the type of person who strives to do right by everyone even under trying circumstances. But I also knew he was tired of this whole thing. This time, maybe, things will truly change. He felt somewhat more at ease when he returned from his encounter with Lily. "I think it went okay," he remarked. However, his tone suggested that okay wasn't precisely the outcome he had been looking for. When I insisted on specifics, he said Lily had promised to back off, but she hadn't apologized for anything. She had not said that she had distorted my statements or that she had been out of line. She claimed she would try to honor our limits. Though hardly much, it was something. Lily and Ryan went radio silent for the following week. Though at least there was no fresh drama, I wasn't sure whether it was a positive indicator or not. Like the storm had gone and left a serene, if nervous, silence in its wake, it felt as though we were at last allowed to breathe. About work, about weekend plans, about anything else than the constant stress with his children, Adam and I even started having regular talks once more. I allowed myself momentarily imagine that perhaps a fresh chapter was beginning here. Perhaps Lily would really provide the room we required to advance and help us to achieve some sort of calm. But then Lily phoned Adam once again, just as I felt things could be turning around. I felt sinking in my belly this time before he even picked up the phone. Adam picked up, and from the first words he spoke, I could sense that this would not be a polite chat. "We already discussed this," he remarked, sounding tense. "We were over it," I thought. I stayed in the other room, but every word I caught caused my gut to turn into tighter knots. When he at last hung up, I inquired what occurred. The expression on his face told me exactly. "She is still not happy," he sighed. "She wants a meeting with both of us as she finds the current state of affairs awkward, like a formal sit-down to discuss everything all over once again." I could not really believe it. We had just now gone through this. Before she knew I wasn't the awful guy she wanted me to be, how many times must we have had the same conversation? Adam reasoned, nevertheless, that perhaps if we tried one more, things might at last calm down. Though I was dubious, I agreed to meet. Though I knew we couldn't avoid her permanently, I also realized this wouldn't be the calm resolution Adam had hoped for. Not at all. I was dreading the day the formal meeting with Lily rolled about arrived. Returning to the same cafe, Adam and I hoped a neutral environment would help to prevent things from ballooning into a full-blown confrontation. Actually, though, I knew exactly how it would turn out. Lily would toss charges, spin the narrative, and reject everything that didn't suit her conception of truth, as I had seen before. Still, I went along with it, partially for Adam's benefit, and partly because, deep down, I still thought I may somehow reach her. We arrived there first once more, waiting for Lily to show up from a booth near the window. Adam was tapping his foot beneath the table, drumming his fingers on the side of the booth, and I could feel the strain radiating off him. Though I attempted to calm him, I felt exactly as anxious. Whatever occurred here would affect our lives going forward. Either we would find some sort of breakthrough or things would simply keep getting worse. Lily arrived just on schedule and seemed as composed as she did throughout our most recent conversation. But I sensed a harshness in her gaze that suggested this would not be simple. She took a seat, got a coffee, and then dove right into it exactly as previously. Her voice sharp, she replied, "I'm still not comfortable with how things are between us." "I don't understand why you're letting her," once more the contemptuous motion toward me, "take control of everything." Like I promised myself I would, I stayed cool. Keeping my voice calm, "Lily, I'm not controlling anything," I said. "I am partners with your dad. As a team, we make choices here. That is the essence of marriage." She did not, however, seem to hear a word I used. Rather, she continued to assert that I had altered her father and that he was no longer the same man he had been. Her voice faltering slightly, she replied, "He used to be more involved with the family, more independent. Everything these days revolves on you. He seems to have changed personally. That final remark struck me like a gut-reversing blow. Looking across at Adam, expecting he would intervene and straighten things out, he only turned back at me with the same tired face I had seen so many times before. He seemed very exhausted, caught between not wanting to drive his daughter away and trying to protect me. And that's when I understood Lily wasn't bothered about the money, the wedding budget, or even the family financial issues. That her dad had moved on infuriated her. She wanted the version of her father who was solely hers, who had not yet discovered a means of starting again without her mother. I inhaled deeply, attempting once again to explain. "Lily, I realize things have changed and that's difficult. I am not, however, seeking to remove your dad from your life. I adore him and am here to help him. I have only ever wanted it." Lily shook her head, obviously dubious nevertheless. She said, "You don't get it," snapping, "You missed her while her mother was ill. You are ignorant of our experience. And now, simply because you are here, you are behaving as though everything is good." Her comments stung, but I tried not to show on my face. Rather, I responded coolly, "I'm not here to replace your mom, Lily. I know your dad misses her as well as you do. We are nevertheless striving forward, and that does not imply discounting the past. She crossed her arms, still austere, her voice full of challenge. "Maybe you should stand back and let my dad figure things out on his own for a while. Perhaps it is what he truly requires. My breaking point was that one. I slanted forward to squarely meet her eye. "I'm not pulling back from my marriage, Lily," I insisted. "Your dad and I are mates. That is not going to change. I'm not going to allow you keep treating me like an outsider simply because you don't like that he moved on." She just gazed at me for a time, and I thought I saw a flutter of something. Maybe recognition, perhaps wrath. She did not reply, though. Rather, she got to her feet, snatched her bag, and said, "Well, I guess that's all there is to say." Then she left the diner, leaving Adam and myself seated in a heavy, awkward stillness. Adam and I stayed there for a few minutes after she departed, both of us still comprehending what had just occurred. Though he wasn't actually deciding at all, I could see the agony in his face as well as the guilt of having to decide between his wife and his daughter. He shattered the quiet at last on the way home. "I'm sorry," he replied gently, his voice no more than a whisper. "I had no idea how much this was undermining you." At first, I didn't know what to say, so I nodded. "Neither of us finds it easy, Adam," I remarked at last. "But I cannot be the negative man in this narrative. Either this is never going to work, or you are here to stand by me. He assured me he would make it plain to Lily this conduct had to stop, or else there would be repercussions. Deep down, though, I wasn't sure whether it would matter. I had tried so hard to right things with her, and all I had gotten in return was more charges and misinterpretation. Still, it was a step. I hoped it would be sufficient to at least temporarily maintain the peace. But peace was not on the cards. Lily began circulating stories once more, just as everything appeared like they would calm down. This time she brought her complaints to the extended family. She informed Adam's parents and siblings that I was attempting to take charge of his life and had been pushing him to cut her out. She portrayed me as some sort of villain, and soon phone calls started to flood in, nearly in tears. Adam's mother called to find out whether he was okay and whether he needed assistance. Texting him, his siblings and sisters expressed concern about him and asked why I was so interested with his money. It was absurd. None of them had ever given our money any thought, yet now they all had ideas about how we ought to be handling things. Telling his family. I wasn't attempting to control anything. Adam sought to defend me, saying I'd actually been the one guiding him back on his feet. Still, I could tell that it was sapping his vitality. Trapped between his wife and his children, he wanted not to be in the midst. He simply wanted everyone to get along, but that was obviously not going to happen. I turned him down when he came to ask whether I would be ready to go over things with his family. I'm not going to sit here and defend my entire marriage to them, I said. That is on them if they choose to believe Lily's falsehoods. I won't be pleading for their approval, though. Adam moaned and stroked his temples as though he had a headache. I just want things to stop getting worse, he remarked, his voice worn. I assumed they wouldn't be as offended if they knew the circumstances. I shook my head and felt the tiredness permeate into my bones. Adam, it's not about comprehending here. It centers on control. Lily finds it unacceptable that you have moved on, and your family is only following her advice. He agreed to let it go finally, but I could sense the weight of the circumstances on his shoulders. To be honest, I also felt worn out, weary of attempting to reconcile with individuals who obviously had nothing to do with me, and of justifying myself. It seemed as though I would always be the outsider, the one upsetting their ideal of how things ought to be no matter what I did. Adam had to travel out of town once more a few weeks later, and this time I chose to merely keep my distance from Lily and Ryan. But Lily visited the house unannounced the day he departed. She didn't waste any time. She simply strolled straight in as like she owned the house and insisted on talking about Dad. The same narrative repeated itself, how I had altered him, how I had seized control, how he needed time to reconnect with his family. Though every word she spoke seemed like a smack, I remained cool. I'm not going anywhere, Lily, I said with great conviction. Your dad and I are a team. That is not going to change just because you are uncomfortable with it. She found that response one bit objectionable. She bolted from the home, slamming the door behind her, and I had an unusual mixture of relief and resentment. At least my work was at last finished. When Adam returned, I informed him what had happened. He groaned and seemed to be bearing the weight of the entire planet on his shoulders. Though I wasn't so convinced, he said, maybe she'll come around eventually. Though I yearned to think that things would improve, a part of me was beginning to come to see that this may become the new normal. Though that was where we were, it was not what I had planned upon marriage to Adam. Currently, then, trapped in this never-ending loop of accusations and misunderstandings, Adam is in the midst attempting to preserve the peace. Though I'm not sure what will happen next, I'm done acting as though everything is all right when it most obviously isn't. Perhaps things will evolve, or perhaps they won't. One thing is certain, though, no matter what Lily or anybody else believes, I am not retreating from my own existence.